to our weekly get together. Today we'll be discussing money. We all want it, we all need it,
We all need it.
but do we all give our money a purpose? I think it's one of those things in life that if we don't give a purpose, it's kind of difficult. But the answer is no. We don't, and that's why we need financial literacy in our lives. Because if we did understand this at a younger age, we wouldn't have so much money issues. So today with Chris, we're going to discuss this. So at what age did you become aware of financial literacy?
Very good question, Jairo. Financial literacy to me is always a growing topic, growing conversation. I'm constantly growing as a person.
Okay.
But I think, and I'm gonna give you just a real quick roundabout story. Especially being like a first generation student,
right?
A lot of this stuff, you would probably hear, but for me, there was never a description or a blueprint on how you're supposed to do it.
Okay.
There's a lot of I have a lot of friends now who are big in investments. Right. And their parents, their grandparents, one person in particular, he told me that his dad was an investor, real estate developer, and his grandfather was. Yeah. So all of that knowledge was passed down.
Right.
But just a quick story on my financial journey in my mishaps, because it definitely wasn't perfect.
Right.
Got my first house when my wife and I, when we were 23, 24 years old.
Man.
With that house, it was one of those things where my wife and I, we were able to just save up a little spare change, but there were different options that we didn't know about, but we were educated on. Okay. There's FHA loans, which are first-time home buyer loans. If you do not know what FHA is, I want you to Google that, because there's a lot of opportunity for individuals for FHA loans. Yeah. And a house, I could tell each and every single one of you, is one of the best things for yourself and your family when it comes to just building up and equity and everything. Right. So FHA, there's conventional loans as well, but we had an FHA loan. And one of the biggest things that my wife and I didn't know or weren't educated on were credit card usages. Okay?
Right.
We had 2 credit cards for everything. So I'm talking about 2 Home Depot credit cards, 2 Lowe's credit cards, 2 Best Buy credit cards, 2 Macy credit cards. Right. And at one point, we maxed out all of them.
But was it because you both had to have a card?
It just felt right. There was no particular reason on why we did this. But we were young, and credit cards are free money as of what we thought. Yeah. But that is wrong. It is not. It is not. Right. So before we moved out of our first house into our next one, we were $30,000 in credit card debt. Our low payment, Jairo, our minimal payment was $956.
Easily.
So what does that mean? If you're paying minimal on all of your credit cards, what does that mean?
You could be in debt for a long time.
Because the interest that you're paying towards, so the $956, only, let's say $200 of that $950, maybe $250 if we're being modest.
Yeah.
Of that $956 are going towards the principal. And my wife and I just accumulated this debt. It took us selling our first house. Thank God the market was great to pay that off, to be able to understand, like, hey, we really need to get educated on financial literacy.
Right. So I like how you said that you had to, unfortunately, you had to sell your house, right, to pay off some of the stuff.
Right.
But the reality is that that's even financial education too, because if your house, you bought it at $100,000, and now it's worth $500,000, you have $400 on equity, meaning that you just gained a lot of money on a place that you live in, shower in, try to raise a family. Right. So even then, there's financial literacy of how your house becomes, because I had to learn it, but I'm just happy you learned it in your 20s. I learned it in my 30s. That's when you said 24, 25 in your house, I'm like, oh, snap, what? That's great, because I had to learn it until I was 30, 32. And then even then, I was a little bit hard-headed about, well, how do I go about saving money, you know?
Mhm.
And it's until I understood that every day I wake up to go to work.
Right.
Every day I think about what's the plan for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Mhm.
But without thinking is I'm receiving a check. But why don't I pay myself at the end of the week
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
getting up? But that
And what do you mean by that? Pay
what I
yourself.
mean by that is I value myself. Am I worth 2% of my check? Am I worth 10% of my check? And some people will say, well, I never thought about that. Yeah, because the last thing we think about, because our mind, we want to produce money as much as possible, is we're getting older.
Mhm.
And we need to value ourselves. You need to value yourself.
Yes.
If even if you have a part-time job at Winter Schnitzel, Mickey D's, whatever it is.
Yes.
But my financial literacy became in early 30s. And I talked to my financial advisor because I learned, you know what? I don't like numbers. I didn't ever like math in school. So I'm going to go to a guy who loves that. So I went to a person, I hired them, and I said, look, this is what I need help on. And believe it or not, Chris, any big move, blah, blah. Yo,
Got
can I
somebody to
do it?
call. Uh-huh.
Yes or no? Nah. That's it. And my wife really asks me, have you talked to the financial advisor?
Mhm.
And I say, you know what? Let me hit him up. One of the greatest things I've learned is it's okay not to know.
Yeah.
What's not okay is not wanting to know. That's the problem where I think I should know a little bit more about saving. But that was my experience with financial literacy. I like how you touched on as well as your friend had a grandfather, right? Grandfather, dad, real
Till
estate.
this
So they already
day,
come educated.
Yeah.
Where maybe you and I, our parents probably were
true.
just more like living day by day.
Day by day. Yeah.
You know?
And you know, it's funny because he tells me till this day there's two guys that I really rely on.
Okay.
And these guys, and I try at this age too
Yeah.
to surround myself
Yes.
with people who
Yes.
I want to be like. You know, you move up. So right now you may be at McDonald's or the movie theater, or for me it was Best Buy, UPS, T-Mobile at that time. But I always saw somebody who I said, "Wow, I want to be like that person." Or I always saw somebody who, you know, maybe at certain jobs, one of my jobs I got the opportunity to see individuals' paychecks. It was just part of my job,
Yeah.
and I would see a paycheck. And I'd be like, wow, there's people out there making that.
Yes.
So how do I get there?
Yeah.
My thing was, I know I can, and I don't know the steps, but I'm not going to settle until I get there.
Right.
And then when you get there,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so now who do I want to be like?
Right.
Now
Right.
who do I want to surround myself with? Now who's going to take me to the next level? Because that's what it's about. It's about you getting to where you want to
Yes.
be, not
Yes.
for just you, but maybe
Correct.
for your family,
Correct.
maybe whatever that motivation is. Why is it that you want to get to where you want to be to? And that's
Yeah.
my goal. I constantly want to keep moving, constantly.
I think for me it's jealousy.
I like, yeah.
At one point,
That's a competitive
I went
jealousy.
to I was 6, 7, 18. I went 18. I don't know if I told you the story because I know you and I have a lot of talks. But
Yeah.
I was 18 years old and our cars were getting fixed, and there was this older white gentleman, right? And he's there, I'm there. And you know, you're waiting for your car to be done so you can pay. So the mechanic, and I'm talking about a hoodie mechanic, right? I'm not talking about a Honda, you know, you wait till they come and greet you with water. So the mechanic comes around and he says, hey, your car's ready. And I said, okay, cool. And sir, I forget his name, but sir, your car's ready too. He gets up, he pulls out of his pocket, just cash, man. And I'm here stumbling with, okay, that credit card, is that 12% interest?
Yeah.
Is that the 4%? You know what? I
Will
think,
it even go through?
you know what? I'll just use this one. So right before when I see the gentleman just pay cash, I asked him, I said, excuse me, sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but I want to be like you one day where I pull out cash and not have to pay someone else for money that I need. He turned around, Chris, and he said, are you planning to go to college? I said, I'm kind of thinking about it. That's your answer. You got to go to college, get educated. Hey, I don't know. I don't know if that person was there for a reason. Some people believe that sometimes there are people that they're just at the right time.
Yeah.
And the difference was, Chris, is that I bought into it. I bought it. I got to
Yeah.
go to college.
Yeah.
So it was that time that I received that information that I bought into it. Same thing with money, understanding credit cards, understanding that there's some guy right now at a yacht having a pina
Nice
colada.
little- Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
well,
Couple
we're
of
trying to figure out, okay, 900, but 200 just go to the principal, and $700 go to this person who's
Yep.
just enjoying it.
them. Yep.
What if I want to be that person?
Yep.
Right? So going with the whole transition into college, man, how did we manage college on a low budget? Do you remember when you were going to college, where your budget was big, or was your budget kind of like kind of small?
So my budget, it started off small. I
Mhm.
was lucky enough at that time. I was I went 18 years old, as I said
Okay.
in one of our earlier VCasts.
Mm-hmm.
So I was blessed to be able to live with my parents as
Yeah.
far as not having to pay rent.
Right.
Had car payment, had a cell phone. So at that time it was small, but then when I transferred over, things started going on, and I
Okay.
ended up living on dorms, and
Okay.
that's when the budget started getting
Kicking in.
bigger.
Okay.
So I say that in a sense because there was the Pell Grant and
Cal Grant.
the Cal Grant,
Mhm.
Promise Grant that I received, and that $4,000 was huge. It
Yeah.
was a game changer as far as how I budgeted my money, along with the little scriblets I get from my job. So I had to learn how to budget it as far as not overspending at that time. There was no overspending, because if I overspent, then there was no help.
Right.
There was no help. So I had to think of it in that sense. And then especially when I went to live on dorm, I remember one day it was one of those things where I knew I was going to be short regardless of how much money I made. Like my
Right.
job and the Pell Grant
Yeah.
could not cover everything. So I'm gonna be real. There was one time where I sat there and I was nervous, man. I think I
Yeah.
shedded a tear
Probably.
because I knew that I would be $400 or $500 short
Yeah.
every month for the semester. So at that time, I mean, it was just trying to just figure things out, and I did have to take out loans at that time. I was lucky enough to be able to do that, but there was struggle in regards to there was no budgeting, there was no savings, but I had that goal in mind that in order to level up, get to that next level, I had to get through college.
So you were working while
Yeah.
going to college. You were
Yeah.
taking probably full time or
Full
part
time,
time. The point is,
30-ish hours. Yeah.
So you're going to school, you're working,
Pyro.
and you're still struggling.
Struggling.
That's a common story, people. The last thing I want you to understand, audience that's listening to me, we all come in struggling.
Real.
I had to a point, going back to the college I went to, there was a 7-Eleven 2 blocks down from there. And to this day, I tell the story. My lunch and sometimes dinner was a big gulp and a hot dog special for $2.99.
Yeah.
And people go say, "You really?" I say, "I have no money.
Yeah, nothing.
Like, what do you expect me to
Right.
do?" You know?
Right.
But one of the things that really impacted me when I was in college was that I understood that it was not going to always be like this. It was temporary.
Yes.
So as soon as I was eating and I'm looking at, man, I gotta eat that again. It is what it is, you know? But then I think the more challenging part is when I would go home. I was not going home to a 5-star house, you know?
Facts.
I was
Yeah.
going back to a trailer park, you know,
Yeah.
and during that time we were living with my grandmother. And my bedroom was a living room.
Yeah.
So it's
Yep.
kind of like, well, financially I'm struggling and my life is a little bit tough, but it's going to be different one day. So once again, I started creating this understanding, and what I learned in my late 30s with financial literacy is, once again, going back to what we said earlier, is give your money a purpose.
Right.
So college became a purpose. So when people say, why you go to college? I ain't trying to be poor again. That was a purpose. That was a purpose. But I like going back to that whole jealousy, man, because I used to see people my same age going to college, pulling up on a BMW, pulling up on let's just call it a newer car than mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And I'll be like, oh man, I wish I could have that. You know, but then I'm thinking about it. Their parents probably went to college.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they got money.
Hand down.
So why am I?
But
gonna be
but
mad
think
at them?
about it. You could have. So there's two options when Hyro's talking about his story. When he's saying, He was sleeping in the living room. When I said I was struggling and $500 short, which at that time, I mean, 500 is 500. 500 was a lot of money to be short. But there's two options. You could stay in that area. You could stay in your parents in the family living room. You could stay struggling. Or you could decide like, hey, like your mind gets strong.
Yes.
I need to change.
Yes.
I need to change.
Yes.
How are you going to level up?
Yeah. And I think that a lot of it is uncomfortable.
Yeah, being uncomfortable.
Right? Because when you're comfortable, nothing really bothers you. It's when you are uncomfortable, you start realizing, why do I live this way? Right? So one of the things that I do encourage you guys is to know that if you are struggling with trying to get a job or part-time job, it really goes back to who you are at the end of the day. For me, my first job was at 12 years old, and I was talking to my daughter. Yeah. You know, I said, because, you know, she was complaining a little bit. And I said, you know, when I had it came back to me. We were talking about 12 years old. I had a job. We were at Smoothie Place, one of the smoothie places.
Yeah. Like a juice it up. Or,
yeah. It was $32. And I was saying for some fruit, water, and ice, I'm heated, right? So I look at her and you go, you know what? When I was your age, I had my first job. And she's like, what do you mean job? And I said, I had my first job. Well, what did you do? You know, what did you do? I said, I washed cars during the summer. I'd go to the dealerships and I say, look, for $5, I'll do $5 each car. Dealerships were happy. Like, yeah, come on by. So ever since I was 12, I always was hungry for that extra comfort of money, but yet at the same time, it came with my personality. So I encourage you guys, if you do want to work and go to college, it is possible. Now, what Chris said is really good. If you can still live with your mom and dad, it's going to be kind of tight right now. Sometimes being independent may not be the right time at 18 years old. I'm going to throw it out there. I know some viewers may get a little bit, you know, itchy with it, but if you're 35,
yes,
you know, figure it out. You know,
it's time.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing they're still living with your parents, but you have Chris and I here to help you understand the value of money or understand the goal with money. So I just want to throw it out there.
And then throwing it out there, and this is the same concept, but. You have to be uncomfortable with if that's the case, you've been way too comfortable for too many years.
Right.
Okay. Talk to us.
Yeah.
If there's if you want options, if you want different, if you want to talk about different things.
Because at the end of the day, if you're on a date, let's be real. I want to be real for a second, right?
Hello.
I'm on a date. I want to say, hey, you want to come over, hang out? Oh, well, by the way, make sure you say hi to mom and dad, though, because they're in the living room.
Before you come through the door.
Ain't going to happen. I'm sorry. I mean, it's going to be difficult for the person you're going out with to be comfortable going to your parents' house and saying, well, good evening. You know, we're just going to go hang out.
Or maybe not.
Or
maybe not.
And that's probably even worse. Hey, who's this? Don't worry about it, Dad. I'm 35. Leave me alone. Boom, slam the door. So at the end of the day, it's, you know, talking about money, right? Understanding the value of money, understanding your value. Because your value is very important. At the end of the day, as men, we have to remember we value. But the value starts with you first. So, so we had the college struggle.
Yeah.
You were trying to learn about credit cards, debt, understanding all of that. The blessing you had in early 20s to look into a house. That's amazing. But what lessons did we learn about money while going to college? And now, 15, 20 years later, after college, I mean, I'm putting my age out there, but what have we learned? I mean, is there stuff that you think that you still need to learn? Is there something you're like, oh man, I still need to learn that?
Absolutely.
What would that be?
Absolutely. And again, this is sort of similar to what you were saying. I go to my mentors and they have to check me sometime. An example of that, just a couple of days ago, I was just joking around with two of my mentors on the text. We were doing like business related things. And I was like, man, it'd be real nice one day to just jump on a private jet with you guys and we go somewhere and just act bougie for a day.
Right.
And then they responded back and they said, Southwest Airlines is completely fine.
Ooh.
It does the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's
Buy cheaper.
$200.
Yeah.
And I said, ooh.
You're like,
Ooh,
"Oh,
you know, I
check."
just put I
Yeah.
just emphasized that
Yes,
point.
yes.
But you know, that's one of the things. One of the things that I've learned and that I'm still learning
Yeah.
is that I don't have to buy the nicest things when you could get something that gets the
Get your
job
mom.
done.
Yeah.
Cars.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a shoe guy,
Okay.
and that's something I stick to one thing.
I
Like
like
I'm
that.
a shoe guy, I'm a
Okay.
car guy, but I'm tapering down a lot.
Okay.
One of the same mentor, he said I could have a Range Rover, I could have, you know, he's a millionaire, he's a rich guy,
Yeah.
and he said, but I drive a Hyundai. Why? Because
Get you point A to
it
point B.
gets you point A to point B. So everybody has their things that they love, but what level do you want to be at? You know, now I'm thinking about, and this is something that I talk about a lot, what am I going to leave for my family?
Yes.
Not just
Yes.
little things like life insurance. That was something that I learned late.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Life insurance. A trust fund.
Right.
That's something that I learned late. I didn't
Right.
know what a difference between a trust is.
Right.
And that's maybe another VCast episode that I
Yeah.
want to do that goes into
Definitely.
detail
Definitely.
about a trust fund,
Mhm.
about a will. What's the
Mhm.
difference between a will and what's the difference between a trust fund? What is probate when it
Yes.
comes to a will
Yes.
and a trust fund?
Yeah.
Talking about different things that you could put in a trust if you're trying to leave
Mhm.
your offsprings, your kids, a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, maybe properties,
Yeah.
maybe money. So
Money.
those things are subjects that
Yeah.
I don't talk about.
And I like how you said the life insurance. Definitely
Yes.
point to it. If you have kids, that's it. Life insurance. That. Well, when should I get life insurance? Because I'm 21. Do you have kids? No, I still will get some of
I
it.
still get
But
it.
as soon as that, or that baby comes in, I need you to go get life insurance. And this is the reason why. Is the last thing you want is your quote unquote your child to struggle economically just the way you probably did. And I
Right.
was reading some data back in the 1920s, 1930s. People who bought life insurance, their children were receiving these checks
Yeah.
after they passed away. So think about it. If your dad would have left you $500,000,
Exactly.
how far more economical you would be as opposed to, hey, your dad passed away or your mom or whoever passed away didn't left you anything, just left you with bills. Now that made because they're going to come and get money.
Right.
They're going to come and get their money. So now that backtracks you about 10, 20, 50 years. But then the person next to you did the life insurance. Even if it's $100,000, that's $100,000 that was given to you to kind of foresee the future.
And then when you think of life insurance, this is not an expensive option.
Mhm.
It's really not. You could get $500,000 for, depending on your age, $21, $31.
Yeah,
You could
easily.
get $1 million for $50, $60 a month. But the biggest thing you know, everybody always thinks, oh, I want to leave my kids something, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you have one property and the equity in that property, and we'll break this down more on a future VCast.
Definitely.
But the equity on that property, you bought it for $100,000,
Yeah.
and the property is now worth $500,000. You sell it, you get $400,000. There's capital gains, all of that stuff. Okay, but
Yeah.
you leave that to your kids.
Yeah.
Okay, that's $400,000. When you could have a life insurance for $30, $40 a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's $1 million.
Yeah.
That's just a start. And then the property could
Yeah.
be added onto that.
Yes. Yes.
So even if you don't have kids,
Yeah.
if you're young,
Yes.
start it now.
Start it
Get
now.
you your $21 a month
Yeah.
to be able to have your $800,000. We'll
In
talk
case.
about, we'll put in the link, different life insurance options that you could explore.
Yeah.
Start it now.
Yeah.
Start it now. I
because
beg you.
When you're 20, I think even $8 or $10
Yes.
because you're young.
Yeah.
40, late
Right.
30s, it gets a little bit more expensive.
Right.
Why? Because we lived a little bit longer and we might have not taken, personal here, but not taking our bodies in a healthier way. So you got to remember, insurance also banking you to live long.
Yeah.
But talking about that, man, with life insurance and everything, what money strategies when looking towards the future, academically, culturally, has really impacted our lives, man, such as home buying, retirement, once again, the life insurance and legacy. I think because we went to school,
Yeah.
our salaries are different now. So for you to set aside X amount of money, someone may say, well, because you had a master's degree, you're able to set money aside. Okay, I can see that. But if you're making, let's say, $200 a week, why couldn't you set aside $8?
$8.
It's just
Right.
the principle of it when it comes
Right.
to money. Understand that money, it comes and goes. I tell people all the time, don't base your life on money. But the reality is, if you want to go get a Slurpee, you can afford a Slurpee. Grab two. Give me the 32 ounce versus the 16 ounce. But at the same time, culture.
Yes.
I think culture plays a big part.
Big time.
As
Big
Latino, it was always said, you worry about today.
Right.
Let's just worry about
Right.
today.
Very similar.
I talk to other
difference.
cultures.
Yep.
I would even say the Jewish culture. They say they look at money not for today, but they look at it from 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
Like I never knew an annual budget until I spoke to some people.
6 months to a year. What
Yes.
is that?
Like, so what's an annual budget? Well, you make I make the numbers.
Spreadsheet. You got
This
the
is-
budget on a spreadsheet.
This is $50,000 a year.
Excel?
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
want to get a house? Okay, 50,000 minus 20. Okay, now you're left with 30,000. Do you want to travel? Not really. Okay, you're saving money there.
Mhm.
So they were thinking 6 months to a year. Well, my dad, my mom, I would say as a culture itself, we're worried about just the next day.
Right. Right.
Did
Right.
you have that experience with your mom and dad?
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. My parents, they used to say we're living paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And you know that it's probably what is learned behavior, but it just didn't feel right with me. I was like, no, Jimmy over there, they don't ever say that.
Right.
Why?
Right.
So with that was the first thing that was going through my head. I got to investigate.
Yeah.
I got to figure this out. And it took me going to college. I think had I never have went to college, I would have never met the people that I've met. Obviously, we wouldn't be here right now to be able to say this knowledge or even talk and articulate. But yeah, I think it's very important to at least hear this and have this running through your brains.
Yes.
Running through your brains.
But I like what you said. Let it just
Marinate.
chew on it. Just chew on it. Like, hey, you know what? Mr. Chris and Jairo talked about some sort of savings. Do I value myself? Can I open a savings account? Yes, you can. Go to your local credit union or bank and just open up a savings account and say, you know what? I'm going to pay myself $10 every 2 weeks. And just pay yourself. Because I guarantee you, I promise you, when you get up to like $100, you're going to think twice before spending that $100 because it took you work. The problem is, it doesn't take work to pull out that credit card and swipe. That is not a lot of work.
That's fun right there.
And if you don't trust me, do me a favor. Go to your local bank or wherever you bank, get $100 cash in your hand. $100 cash. See how much you will last that with the credit card. You will notice it's going to hurt you more every time you pick up that $100. Like, how much is that? 15? Ooh. Because why? Because it's tangible.
Yeah.
And you can see it.
Yeah.
Credit card, you swipe.
Yeah.
So I would once again, I want to thank you guys for joining us today. For our viewers out there, this is a topic that is not spoken in our living rooms and our dinings, and our dinners, lunch. And for those who do have that, you're blessed. Thank your mom, your dad, your uncle, whoever spoke to you about financial literacy today. Go to them and just shake their hand or give them a big hug and say, hey, thank you for teaching me enough where I don't have to live my life in poverty. And for those who don't, just keep that in mind, okay? So thank you for joining us today. Until next time, you guys be safe.
Subscribe.
Yes, please.
Listen in.
Yes.
We appreciate you all. Thank you.
Right.